suddenly it was as though my feet had caught on fire. And then my fingertips. So peripheral neuropathy. But that pain traveled inward toward my chest and up from my legs rapidly. And you just know when you've done something catastrophically wrong. This was unlike anything I had felt before, and I knew something really bad was happening.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally within 15, 20 seconds, I felt my body shutting down. You know, I tell people, dying is easy. Living is hard. But I remember my lungs starting to seize, and it was as though the cab of the truck had filled up with water and I was gasping for air. Remember, I was a guy that had never acknowledged God.
Yeah.
Despite her best efforts,
Yeah.
I went along with it, but never felt that connection. And yet, in that last nanosecond of life, I knew I was dying. And I remember raising my right hand to the setting sun, and I remember it was shaking violently. And this prayer welled up inside of me from a part of me that I don't think I even knew existed. And I raised my hand to the setting sun and I cried out, God, forgive me. Not out of fear. I'd faced death a couple of times with aircraft, never flinched.
Yeah.
It's an overwhelming feeling in the last nanoseconds of my life that I had wasted this beautiful life that God had given me. And I was asking forgiveness for having wasted that life that so many of us take for granted. I remember my hand fell down, I fell forward, my face cracked the steering wheel, and I was gone. I'm not sure how long I was gone at that point, but I remember waking up and sitting back up, I thought, and I knew time had passed because now the sun was right on the horizon.
Okay.
The setting sun was touching the horizon, so I knew a period of time. But suddenly I become aware that I'm pain-free. For the first time in all these years, not only am I pain-free, but I feel incredible. I feel like I'm 15 or 16.
Wow.
I'm in the process of feeling unbearably light. And I remember sliding out of the truck and walking 10, 15 feet away, and I'm looking up. I have all my senses. I can smell the trees. I can hear the birds. It's the evening. The sun, as I said, is on the horizon setting. And I've never felt so alive. It was as though I had taken off a heavy, wet overcoat. But I look down at my feet, and it's as though I can see through them. I can see the ground. I see the outline of them, but I'm looking through them.
Wow.
And I thought, well, that's just the after effect of the medication. That'll pass. And then I turn and look back at my truck. And I'm filled with rage and indignation because someone has had the sheer audacity to get in my truck. And not only that, he's sleeping on the steering wheel. And I turn in my rage and indignation to go over there and tell him what for. And you ever had a dream where you're trying to run and your feet just won't move?
Yes.
And as I turned toward the truck, I would lean my body forward, but I could only manage a few inches at a time. It was as though my feet were mired in something, and yet they were on the ground. I could see through them. But I did manage to stagger a few feet closer. And then I look up, and I look into the cab of the truck. Words fail me to describe that momentous realization that, in fact, that person sleeping on in the truck over the steering wheel is me. And this feeling of panic, but my first impulse was, something has happened, but if I could just get back in my body, everything will be okay. If I could just get back, I've got to get back. I've got to get back. Something has happened. But the more I tried to move toward it, the more difficult it became. I'd like to give you a sense of the images that that I saw. And to the best of our ability, we've tried, with the help of a talented artist, to recreate some of these images. Please keep in mind that nothing could truly recreate the things we saw. But I'm trying to give you some feeling for what was terrifying me, astounding me, or making me incredibly happy. And so the first one I'd like to talk about is the tunnel of light. And as I ascended above the truck where I had died, and as a pilot, I'm a good judge of altitude. And when I got to between 1,500 and 2,000 feet, I tilted my head back and looked up, and this beautiful golden circle, maybe 60 feet in diameter, appeared in the sky. And then the center filled with a golden light. But that golden light swung inward like the circular door on an old-fashioned safe. And when it did, suddenly my body took on an intense rate of speed and went directly into this entrance into the tunnel of light. And as I was swept into this incredible entrance to another dimension, to another world, I could see the blue of the sky on the exit, on the sides of this, as though it had collapsed inward. And I felt like I was looking into infinity. But at the very center of this far distant tunnel was this brilliant golden light, as though it were a beacon. Just as I had followed aviation beacons, avionics, in my life to find my way, now I was completely out of control, but heading toward this beautiful golden beacon. As I stood gazing down into that pit that I describe more detail in the book, and hearing the sound of two massive doors that had not been opened in a long time, screeching in protest as the hinges were forced open. And so, as you can see from the picture behind me, I'm looking down into this deep crevasse. I hear these massive doors opening. I see the dull red glow of a fire behind those doors. And the feeling of despair, the feeling of hopelessness, the feeling of absolutely being alone that rose up out of that pit was combined with the most horrific stench you can imagine. An odor of things, of decay, of things long dead, a smell of things that should never, ever see the light of day, came up from that pit toward me. This picture of Jesus with his hand outstretched toward me is more than just a gesture to halt. That flooded me with sorrow and doubt, because clearly I was to come no further. But when he held his hand up to me and his sleeve fell back, there in his wrist I saw the remains of the crucifixion. And when I saw that, I was filled with such remorse and sadness and guilt. I felt as though I had held the nails and swung the hammer. It was that personal a moment. He gave his life for us, and I felt as though I had done it. And as I looked at that upstretched arm, I began to beg, I began to plead, to ask him to let me stay. I had no idea what was happening to me. But But Jesus knew. Jesus knew. Just as he knows everything that is in your heart.